Hello, and welcome to today's session of MyLife AI Open Development. I'm Jefferson, President and Platform Architect here at MyLife. MyLife's aim is to put you and all of us in control of our AI experiences for our own private, personal, and collective well-being. Today I'm broadcasting from the Beverly Library, and thanks for letting me use the facilities. In our ongoing Diary Bot series, it's time to put a face to this intelligence and personality extraordinaire figure of the Diary Bot. Last week, we explored the MyLife backend pipeline for LLM engagement, and today we create the front-end interface elements needed to engage meaningfully with our Diary Bot. MyLife is a 501c3 nonprofit member organization that offers its membership at no charge an intelligent AI-assisted platform that helps them collect and preserve their cherished memories, stories, media, and ideas for posterity as their digital legacy. MyLife is not affiliated with any paid premium or freemium service. What you see is free, and what you see is what you get. Well, what is this? Well, let me tell you a little bit about why we put this together and the use cases that have been driving our functionality decisions. Let's say you're someone who's lonely, perhaps in a retirement community, suffering from or worried about memory loss. Perhaps you know somebody in this situation. Well, MyLife will help them capture their story. Or someone who's struggling to understand themselves, their identity, and how they want to show up in the world. Or maybe you know someone who is. MyLife provides a safe and private sanctuary for such self-investigation and awareness. Or someone in the military deployed to a remote location, or a veteran working through memories. Or maybe you know someone who is. MyLife provides a secure, supportive platform to document, preserve, and share your personal experiences and stories, offering you tools for introspection, legacy building, and connection with loved ones, whether during deployment or after returning home. It's for all of us, built by us, for us. We are many and we are varied in our needs. So we began here at MyLife by building an intelligent open source and free platform for all of us to use that helps elicit, store, protect, and ultimately make intelligent our narratives according to our explicit consent. AI makes this all possible because it can make anything that is linguistically intelligent. It can make anything that has a context linguistically intelligent, abstractions like a story or a memory or an idea. So how are we going to go about doing this? Well, let's take a walk through the platform. All right. So here we see the main website. At the first glance, you're introduced to Q, our corporate intelligence. We're going to bypass that and just go directly to the login screen so I can show you what membership entails. Oh, I would like to log in as myself in this case. That was our test user. All right, so logging in is pretty simple. Once the page loads, I want to show you a couple things you get as a member of MyLife. You get an avatar, a system avatar, member avatar at the top, where you can essentially conduct your account business, as well as a lot of future technology we're intending to build there, because it is the main controller of your experience. One thing it controls is the MyLife memory team. By default, when you sign up for MyLife, you get your own personal memory team, and it's composed of a biographer and a scrapbook. The journaler is an addition. We also are working on, you might have heard about it, a diary. But this is the current live version. So in this, you get a biographer. You can name your biographer, and currently you can set options that detail its personality when you interact with it. So I have certainly interacted with my biographer a couple times. So I want to just paste in my entry for today and see how Madrigal handles it. Will they post it to the system with the correct name this time? Have I been working on solving that? Well, yes and Regardless, Madrigal's on a slow connection today, so we're hoping it'll work. But meanwhile, as that's preparing itself, let's take a look at a memory that's already saved. This is one friend of mine and I went to. Let me just make sure it didn't actually, okay, Moby Dick is still selected. Let's see if that worked as intended. Right now, we do need to restart. Oh, did it call it new story? It did. So let us show an example here of how we would retitle it in the instance that it fails to title it correctly. But in this instance, we have a couple of options. We now have our memory stored. This is from today. And I can add to that memory by, for instance, clicking on a prompt. I remember thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great if Madrigal saved this memory? Well, I hope Madrigal doesn't take that as a clue to save a new memory. But because we had an active memory updated, or available for update, Madrigal should in fact add that content to the end of this entry. But again, the website is taking a while we're eating up bandwidth with this. Another way in which you can enhance and improve and move a memory forward, improve your memory, enhance your memory. Let's take a look, see if those things are true. Yes, they did in fact. They did in fact edit. So that's a couple of ways to edit. You can also directly edit. I could go in here and just start typing. This is a new line. I might want to clean this up a little bit later. This is my account and save it, and that'll be saved to the database as well. One last option I want to show you for right now, because this is in a sense how memories are going to be shared as well. One of the technologies we have in place is for your biographer to share your story back to you in pieces, and at which point you can update it by telling it, no, that didn't happen just that way. Here's some additional information, and we'll incorporate that into the summary that it has created for you behind the scenes inside the scrapbook. So that is the basics tour of the short functionality, but we are improving this reliving memory functionality, and we're trying to move it into a space like what you're going to see right now. Essentially, like I said, any narrative could be made intelligent, and any narrative can be made dynamic, and any narrative can be made interactive. So this is the first sprint. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is the beginning of the tutorial. And here, what's happening is that we are creating an engaging experience. So you can imagine up at the top, rather than just being tutorial information, it could be about the narrator setting the scene for your memory. Then you might engage the user. In our case, we ask, what's a core hobby of ours? Reading books. And so what it's going to do now is it's going to dynamically create some dialogue based upon your answer. So it's going to try to explain my life, or share with you some of the basic elements where my life can be helpful to you as a member. And then it asks you if you would like to speak with anybody from the past. Virginia, I've never spoken with her. Spelled wrong. No, should be no problem. The avatar now can dynamically make new characters, or if there are characters in your memory, it could bring up and pop up an interactive character dialogue for you to engage with, or for auditors of your memory to engage with. So I wanted to show you that little piece we've been working on. And now that we've done the walkthrough, why don't we take a look at what our learning objectives are going to be for today. So today, like I said, we're primarily focused on the front end. And while we'll go through the GitHub repository, I might as well start there. You can, I'm going to share my screen again. We can look at the GitHub issue that we're going to deal with today. We store everything in GitHub. It is open source. Our code base is open source, both the front end and the server side. are open source technologies, and they're embedded in one code base. And we're managing that currently through GitHub via projects and issues. So, voila, here's our issue du jour, the DiaryBot cover art. So these are the tasks that we're going to have to go through today, which brings us to our first bullet point, consent and control architecture. This is where we want to move the front end to, and I'll describe a little bit about what the vision for MyLife is as the front end is concerned. I would say that this is also a terrific time for me to mention that we are preparing to engage UI UX experts at the top level, whether for our board or just general volunteering, to help us take a turn on the interface. As you just saw, the interface moments ago, me demonstrating it. It's functional, but it is in no way the ideal. And I want to talk a little bit today about the ideal before we go into the specifics of how we would create a diary bot inside of MyLife for the front end right now. So, where is the world going? The world is going to really what will only be at this large generic level, one place. We're going to have intelligent services, delivering those intelligent services to intelligent clients. We don't yet have a vision. And when I say we, I'm not talking specifically about MyLife. There are no protocols or there are no definitions. I'd say that right now, as far as an intelligent API consumer is concerned, I've seen a bunch of backend UI, Gen UI it's called, and we incorporate some of those elements inside of MyLife right now. But what we envision is an entirely intelligent avatar that acts on your behalf. And we do anticipate that your member avatar will be MyLife's gift to you when you go to other services like Amazon. Your avatar will greet Amazon's intelligent services, and it will be your protection, your layer of armor, and your security when dealing with a platform like Amazon. And as an example, so how will that work? We presume it will work in some version of the following manner, which we are implementing in our code base, at least hooks for the development of such things. We anticipate that when an intelligent platform meets an intelligent client, the first thing it does is shake its hand. As with most protocols, there will be a defined protocol for negotiation, for compromise, and all of this happening inside of an intelligent framework based on the consent of the individual, the human individual volitioning the intelligent consumer, and the platform's requirements itself. So an avatar will negotiate and handshake with MyLife, at which point necessary functions would be injected, right? Like, so if you don't know how to show an experience, like I just showed you, a graphic novel style, if your consumer doesn't know how to do that, it would inject your intelligent consumer with that ability if consent mechanisms were aligned. Second bit, once that's been established, once the handshake has been aligned and the requirements for the consumer as well as for the system have been achieved, let's say they have been, they move to the next level. And this is where command and control architecture really comes in, and that's what we're calling it. It is essentially the server driving the front end and doing so through specific channels with specific intelligent instructions that are broken up into scene or event partitions. So what you saw in the tutorial was in fact, or the pseudo tutorial was in fact an experience. You were led through events, moment by moment, piece of dialogue by character entry, and that experience was then rendered to the front end. It could be a memory, it could be a tutorial. Once we have the bots building those scripts themselves, we will have a relatively turnkey situation for that experience to occur with any piece of content. Now, lastly, departure. After the experience is done, or whatever set of experiences were required by the handshake, this is where data is stored. Final tallies and receipts are made and stored in their various systems. So that's how we expect in the future, let's say the MyLife platform interacting with an anonymous, well, maybe anonymous is a bit strong, but a non-MyLife ecosystem or exosystem partner that provides individuals with their own intelligent avatars or consumers. So that's kind of the premise we're working towards. You won't see a whole lot of that in what I'm going to display to you. However, there are stubs and illusions, and I'll explain some of the to-dos as regards that in our case. Okay, so let's take just a quick look again at the DiaryBot specifications. And we're going to go through these slides by slide, but I will give you the overview. We needed to first modify the HTML so that the front end had a way of displaying the DiaryBot. We then have to write the logic behind the bot containers and any unique indicators inside of it. Sorry, B is number 2, but it's actually the last thing we do. Scrapbook and items. So basically, the DiaryBot is going to create an entry, which is different from a memory, similar but different than a memory. So we need to allow for that entry to be found, to be displayed, and to be operated on by the member. We need to do that. We need to put some front-end assets together, some pretty pictures, as you might see in the CSS. And then I am going to fake next week's work by creating a data object that will allow us to just review how this has worked so far. Okay. So let's just jump right into it. Inside of our code base, in the front end portion of the views, we're not using any front end framework. It's haphazard and homegrown for the time being for a number of reasons. A lot of it was testing the various, how to streamline various activities and interactions with the bots. So, as I said, there's huge room for UI, UX development, both in a Gen UI cutting edge framework as well as converting a lot of this dry. It's good. It could be, for front end people, this might be drier than I'd want to be able to share with you one day. It will be drier than I will be sharing with you one day. Okay, so we have a bot HTML. We break it down into widgets for the lack of a better term. And bots will be pretty much everything under the team section on the right-hand side when the sidebar converts into member.mjs. So let's just take a brief look at the code. This is the bot's HTML. It begins by creating a bot bar where there's the title and the name being displayed of the bot, and then drop down carets for options. This has all been settled math for the other bots, and there are no unique classes that come into play, so we haven't had to mess with it. We add the name option, and then we add, this is just a display of a couple, but we also have the options for, what do I like to journal about? So this itself is right now hard-coded, of course. I think it was on the to-do section of the previous slide. Of course, we anticipate moving this into a dynamic frame at the very least, where the back end is, no, if not the back end, the front end is dynamically building these bot containers via JS based upon the bot data it network receives when querying the MyLife intelligent platform. Okay, so DiaryBot. But DiaryBot has options. DiaryBot also has a button at the bottom. Button start. Let's get started. This was one of the specifications, and I want to show you how we did that. It's a pretty straightforward mechanic, and I would say a very effective one for us and for any system like this trying to deploy these intelligences to help us get our work done or tell our stories. Another thing we need to do, as I had mentioned, is the collection entry. So down at the bottom, your scrapbook needs to be able to display entries and have pop-ups that are generated related to the entry that you've stored with your DiaryBot. So as you can see here, we're just adding a line called entries. So now that the HTML is positioned on the page, we can start looking at the diary bot options. Now, the bot options, again, are the drop downs that, let me go ahead and pop that back up here. Options are the drop downs on the right hand side. So for the diary bot, it was similar to this one I enjoy journaling about. A few items that are relevant to what one generally typically uses a diary for. Those are not self-configurable just yet, but they certainly could be if that is of interest to members. So that's what we're talking about here. There was very little to do because all of the code that exists in the code base right now really does, in fact, already point to the correct place. So in other words, if you need to change the name of your diary bot, that code is already written and it will self-occur because the listeners and any of the other event triggers are exactly the same. They just head to the correct destination. So in this one, why don't I, however, just show you real briefly some of the logic behind the start diary, getting started with your diary. So this is a new button, and what we do at that point is we are doing nothing more than adding, and this is the simplest version. This type of mechanic has been with us for a year at least now, which is a dry kind of question. How do I get started? So basically that question is being pre-infused into the payload. It's being injected directly into the payload and sent to the server as if you yourself had asked how do you get started. My inclination at this point is to develop this kind of code to the point where I don't have it to do in here, but we can use the AI transcript of this. So one thing I would like to do is to determine when the last usage was, so that how do I get started, probably at the MyLife server side, is able to understand if you've used that bot today. Are you asking because you want to know how to get started that day? Or is this your first usage and you'd like to know how to get started? Okay. Additionally, as I've mentioned a couple of times, we're now talking about the backend code for this. We need to allow the scrapbook, well, backend code. On-page JavaScript is more like it. So front-end code base. We need to allow the scrapbook to show entries. Not everyone will have entries. We're just starting the diary bot, but if you have entries, that line item will show up. That's probably not true. It's going to show up regardless. But note to do needs to be inserted so that when someone doesn't have a diary bot, entries are not available. However, in this instance, we may have the diary bot be a default object. And again, I'll take care of a lot of this next week because next week we connect it all together. Today we're doing the front end. We've done most of the back end work. We just now need to give the member a way to create and design their own diary bot. Okay, so let's jump back here. What we need to do is we need to allow the scrapbook to show entries. And in those entry items, when they pop up, we want to add this functionality called obscure. We're going to add the obscure functionality at the item level so that it will run this functionality, it will run this code against one item at a time. We don't want to obscure an entire collection. Okay, so just down on this slide, you see the code, I haven't seen the code for the scrapbook. Now we do get into a dynamically generated set of divs. Now what this is doing is this is describing the pop-up and what's unique to an entry pop-up. So early on the left-hand side, this is done in bots.mjs. Not only is our back-end code modular, we have strived to make our front-end code modular, at least again, if we were to adopt a framework, well, but if we were to implement one or more front-end frameworks like React, Angular, we would all hold to this, but the concept is that we do use modular controllers. So this is the bots. It's in the bots that deal with entries. So our diary is a bot. So what we see here is the dynamically generated scrapbook item that's going to pop up when individuals have stored an entry with their diary. Okay. So let's move on to one of the last pieces that we need to put into place before seeing our diary bot live on screen. We need to get some thumbnails ready. Actually, there's only one thumbnail required at this point in time. Certainly, you might have noticed that there's no icon for the chat blurbs from the various bots. I've just never done it. And obviously, we should have something like that available at all times. So one of our tremendous volunteers will write something up for me. Diary journal. We got our little picture on the left-hand side. This is the one we're going to be using for now inside the system. We also need to make some CSS improvements. They're really not much different at large than how we've defined what I'm calling shadow prompts, those teal entities that pop up when we look at a scrapbook item. So here you go. This in this area here, some people involved. We're not going to be showing that. Instead, we're going to have an object called obscure entry. Okay. So that's the code that's going to shape that. Now comes some interesting stuff. Next week, I'm going to pull it all together, assign the diary bot to a team, and then have that team, the memory team specifically, and have a diary bot created in the instances that an individual does not already have a diary bot in their arsenal. No one has a diary bot right now, except for one test instance. And so that was all done by hand. So what I had to do is I had to create a diary bot data phantom inside of MyLife as well as inside of our L. So here is the diary bot data inside of MyLife, a little truncated, but this is just how we store a bot being inside of our Cosmos NoSQL database. And this little postman bit. This is me now showing you the record that was created via the interface for this diary bot inside the LLM. The instructions are the same. Everything is the same. I want to just talk real quickly about the obscure function because a little bit more had to be done. We have a general function here. Essentially, this is a GPT, an under the hood assistant GPT, API GPT that we have that can conduct a number of base operations that do not require a kind of tuned or deeply instructioned list, like obscuring an entry, whether it's a memory or a journal entry, should be as simple and should always include the same rules. For now, so first name only. And so that's what we've described here. And this is just the last piece of intelligence that is running the actual workflow. And I didn't show that to you last week. It would have been pertinent to last week's, but that is not where before we wrap up, sorry for jumping ahead on this there. I would like to share, I'm going to have to do it slightly separately. I would like to share the version of our test bot. I hope you're seeing that. It looks like you will. Okay, so what's happening here? I have logged in on my local. I have logged in. This is version 24 up there. So I've logged in as our test account Flip, and Flip has been given that diary object the way we just spoke. I created those data fields. So here it is in action. We've got our diary elements here. And it's coordinates so that if I change its name, let's say I just want Splotch. Oh, no, I think I restarted the server. Is that true? Bear with me. It is in fact true. So why don't we have a minute or two? So I would like to go ahead and demonstrate what the diary bot is going to look like. There's a couple pieces of functionality that are untested, and I'm not going to test them today. But I would like to show you how this stuff works and how obscure, as an example, a very specific example, works. Okay, let's see if we can just change it to Splotch. Great, we can. Okay, so let's go to diary. Let's go to diary Splotch. I could Let's not mess with that. I don't want to do the get started. It's not as interesting, like I said. No, okay, sure, fine. Get started button. It's just going to say blurpity blurp. Tell us what's on your mind. Not very exciting. We can tune that. We would tune that. We would tune that more effectively inside the instruction set when necessary based upon member feedback. But let's go ahead and take an entry that was stored here. And I just wanted to show you quickly the obscure entry button on the bottom left. So what this is going to do is it's going to send that obscure command as I asked to the system. And then I have some six. Have you? Yes. D was there, and whoever D scoffed at my subbing. So that's an example of how it just kind of, that could be any function, be the obscure function. So that is where we have this. Okay. Now, bear with me one moment. Let's go ahead. Pull that back up. So thank you for watching that. We're mostly going to see that in action next week. Like I say, poor Clip or Lucky Clip is the only one with a diary bot currently. But what do we need now? We have certainly some immediate challenges. Our growing list of volunteers, extraordinary volunteers, it's become large enough that we need someone to help us manage. So we need a volunteer manager. As I spoke, as you saw with your own two eyes, we're going to be looking, put out a search for both volunteers at the intern level as well as at the expert level for UI UX. And as always, while theoretically one would get better at these things as they go along, I could still utilize a volunteer webinar coordinator to help me get through these webinar sessions. As always, fundraising, you can go to our homepage and donate. You can go to GitHub and donate. You can. We have a Patreon in the works, and we'll talk more about that as we roll it out. We need more social market penetration. So please follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we keep our primary residents. Next week, you're going to hear a lot about alpha pilot applicants. We have a list of 50 applicants currently, and we want to grow that. So we're going to look to, it's still a closed alpha, but we're going to expand that alpha to anyone who's interested. So if you're interested, if you want to test drive a lot of the features that I've shown today, we'll be developing in the future, go to our homepage at thehumanremembranceproject.org. Long story, long URL. Go to our homepage and just type into Q, register me, and Q will take you through the process. Well, I thank you so much for joining today. I want to give a shout out again to our volunteers who are incredible, especially as we are running a internal pilot right now. The only issue is there's too few in number, but I want to especially thank Sheila, Steve, Russ, Avani, Lakshmi, Mark, Jesse, Jeff, and Chris. And next week, well, strike up the band. We are going to put the diary bot on a team. We're going to connect the dots, and we are going to release basic alpha diary bot intelligence to our membership. So stay tuned. It's going to be tying it all together, and then you can have your own diary bot inside of MyLife. Thank you very much for joining me today. See you next session.